Whispers of the Wind. Part 1: The Silent Grove. In the quiet village of Mira, where the trees whispered and the rivers sang, there was a place called the Silent Grove. No one dared go there after sunset, not because it was dangerous, but because it was forgotten. Overgrown, untouched, and always bathed in a faint mist, it was said the wind didn't blow there like it did in the rest of the world. But for 11-year-old Theo, a boy with a heart full of wonder and a pocket notebook he never put down, the Silent Grove was irresistible. He'd grown up on stories, tales told by his grandmother, who had once claimed to hear songs from the trees themselves. One afternoon, while chasing a fallen feather that danced on the breeze, Theo found himself standing at the edge of the grove. The air stilled the moment he stepped inside. No birds. No rustle. Just silence, and something else. A presence. He wandered farther in, drawn by a faint humming, low and melodic, like the breath of an ancient flute. It led him to a single standing stone, moss-covered and glowing faintly in the setting sun. Theo reached out to touch it. The moment his fingers brushed the stone, the wind exploded around him, swirling leaves, lifting dust, and whispering in tongues he'd never heard before. And then, just as suddenly, it all stopped. Except now, Theo could hear the wind, clearly. It spoke. "You have heard us," it said. "You have awakened the first thread." He stumbled back. "Who are you?" "The Weave," it whispered. "And you, Theo of Mirasol, are a listener." Theo's notebook fell open in his hand. The pages flipped furiously, finally stopping on a blank page. Across it, in shimmering script that hadn't been there before, a single message appeared. "Find the echoes. Mend the threads. The wind remembers." He turned toward the village, heart pounding, the Silent Grove now very much awake behind him. The wind danced at his heels. This was just the beginning. Part 2: The Map of Whispers. Theo barely slept that night. The wind whispered through his window, speaking in riddles. It wasn't like a voice in his head, it was real, brushing against his ears, carrying songs that hummed deep into his bones. By morning, he had filled 3 pages of his notebook with symbols, names, fragments of a language that had never been taught. And in the center of the final page, a map had appeared. Not drawn by his hand, but by something else. The map shimmered faintly and showed paths across the forest, circling the grove and branching far beyond what Theo had ever explored. At each junction, a strange symbol pulsed softly. They looked like musical notes, or maybe, seeds. He showed the page to his grandmother over breakfast. She paused, her teacup halfway to her lips. "Where did you see this?" she asked, eyes narrowing. Theo hesitated. "The Silent Grove." Her hands trembled as she set the cup down. "Your grandfather once heard the wind there too." Before he disappeared. Theo froze. "You said he went traveling." She nodded slowly. "He did. Into places only the wind remembers." She reached under the table and pulled out an old scarf, faded blue with silver threading, and tied it around his neck. This was his. "It carries the thread of listening. Keep it close." That afternoon, Theo followed the map. The first symbol led him to an old well, long dry. As he approached, the wind began to hum again, and words echoed up from its depths. "Listen, to the roots." Theo knelt, closed his eyes, and let the breeze wrap around him. His notebook flipped again, pages dancing until a new page revealed a story, half-formed, as if waiting to be finished. A girl lost in fog. A bell that sang her name. A root that reached like a hand. As he touched the well stones, the earth vibrated. A single green vine unfurled from within, glowing faintly. He pulled it free. A second message appeared on the page, one echo found. 9 remain. The wind stirred his hair and whispered with joy. Theo looked at the horizon. There were more echoes to find. Part 3: The Clockmaker's Song. The second echo took Theo into the oldest part of Mirasol, to a crooked alley that led to an even older shop. Ian's timepieces, the faded sign read. He had passed by it countless times, but never had the courage to enter. Today, the door creaked open before he could knock. Inside, clocks of every size ticked and talked in wild, overlapping rhythms. A scent of oil and ash hung in the air. At the center sat an old man with foggy spectacles and long fingers, working on a pocket watch that shimmered like moonlight. "You brought the wind," the man said, not looking up. Cale opened his mouth, but the old man raised a finger. "The wind has brought you, rather." The wind circled them gently, rustling pages and pendulums. Cale's notebook opened again, revealing a half-finished lullaby written in spiraling script. "The second echo is a song," the clockmaker said, tapping a chime above Cale's head. "One that turns time backwards. Find its rhythm." As the chime rang, Cale was flooded with a memory, not his own. A child rocking in a cradle. A woman humming the melody. A clock striking 13. He reached toward a music box near the window. Its lid opened on its own, revealing a tiny spinning dancer and a gear that glowed. The melody completed itself in Cale's mind, and the wind echoed it, pleased. A new vine, silver this time, curled from the box. 2 echoes found. 8 remain. The old man smiled, his eyes moist. "You're weaving the threads again. The wind hasn't sung here in many years." As Cale left the shop, the clocks began to chime in harmony, each one playing a note of the lullaby. Part 4, Beneath the Clockmaker's Shop. As the door behind them creaked closed, Mira and Corin found themselves in a tunnel dimly lit by lanterns made of glowing beetle shells. The air was filled with the faint ticking of thousands of clocks above their heads. Corin whispered, "This must run beneath Master Ryler's entire workshop." The walls of the tunnel were covered in carvings, spirals, windswept trees, and eyes that blinked with subtle magic. Mira ran her fingers over a spiral, and it shifted slightly beneath her touch, revealing a narrow stairway downward. "I think this is it," she said, already stepping through. The stairway opened into a circular room carved out of the earth itself. In its center stood a brass structure, a spherical contraption of rings, gears, and lenses. Hovering within the device was a floating parchment. The wind swirled gently in the room, though there were no windows. Corin approached first, staring at the parchment. "It's another piece of the map," he said. "But look at this, it's changing." Indeed, as they watched, the lines of the map shifted, almost breathing. Mira noticed a tiny inscription along its edge, written in a language she recognized from her family's old storybooks. "It's Old Whistle Tongue," she said. "I think it says, 'The path to the wind heart opens only when time forgets itself.'" Corin frowned. "What does that mean?" They stood in silence until Mira noticed the brass rings surrounding the parchment. Each was engraved with numbers, symbols, and names of forgotten moons. She turned one ring carefully, and the parchment glowed. Suddenly, the ticking from above grew louder. The gears on the walls began to spin wildly, and the lanterns blinked out one by one until only the floating parchment lit the room. And then, time stopped. Mira couldn't hear her heartbeat. Corin's hair hung still in the air. The motes of dust no longer drifted, they simply hung. Then, with a sound like wind exhaling, a panel on the floor slid open. Inside it lay a small glass vial containing swirling golden mist, and beneath it, a note. "When all winds fall silent, the wind heart shall stir. Carry this breath into the still forest." As soon as Mira lifted the vial, the gears resumed. Time returned with a gentle hum. Part 5, The Still Forest. With the vial of golden wind secured in a velvet pouch, Mira and Corin emerged from beneath the clockmaker's shop, the moonlight now silver and high. Windenreach was unusually quiet. Not even the usual hoots of the night owls or the creaks of turning weather vanes broke the silence. Time, it seemed, had softened its edges around them. They traveled east, beyond the cobbled streets and through the wheat fields that whispered their own secrets in the breeze. Ahead, the trees thickened and the air grew hushed. The still forest awaited. It wasn't called still just because it was silent. Within it, no wind ever blew. Leaves never rustled. Even fireflies floated motionless between trunks like flecks of frozen starlight. People from the village rarely came here. Some said the forest swallowed time. Others believed it was where the wind keepers once slept. Mira clutched the pouch around her neck. The vial pulsed gently, glowing a little brighter with each step into the trees. Corin looked up. Not even the clouds are moving. The deeper they walked, the stranger the forest became. The trees grew in perfect spirals, and some bent backward as if frozen mid-dance. A deer stood a few paces ahead, unmoving, blinking once in a long, slow rhythm. It watched them pass but didn't flee. Then, they reached a clearing shaped like a circle, too perfect to be natural. In its center stood a stone archway wrapped in ivy that didn't sway. Etched into the arch's base were 7 symbols: sun, moon, feather, flame, spiral, eye, and wind. Mira stepped forward. This is it. She opened the pouch and gently uncorked the vial. The golden mist drifted upward like a single breath finally exhaled. It moved on its own, coiling around the wind symbol etched into the stone. As it touched the carving, the stone began to hum. A tone echoed through the forest, long, low, and harmonious. Birds blinked back into motion, leaves fluttered as if taking their first breath in years, and the archway shimmered. The ivy peeled away, revealing a glowing portal of soft blue light. Corin grasped Mira's hand. Together, they stepped through. Beyond the archway, the world bent. The sky was a swirl of turquoise and plum, with floating islands shaped like teardrops. Giant feathers drifted through the air like airships. The ground was soft, like moss and memory. This was no ordinary place. This was the realm of the wind keepers. Before them stood a windborne figure, tall and robed in clouds. Her hair flowed like cirrus and her voice was like the hush before a storm. "You carry the breath of memory," she said. "And you seek the wind heart." Mira nodded. The figure smiled, but there was sadness in her gaze. "Then you must pass the 3 winds. Only then can the heart be awakened. And only if you remember why you came." Part 6: The Trial of the Second Wind. The second wind was not a gust or a gale, it was a memory. Mira and Corin stood at the edge of a bridge suspended in the clouds. A narrow path of light shimmered in front of them, leading to a floating island shaped like a shell. The robed wind keeper pointed to the distance. "The second wind guards the truth of before. You must walk its path without forgetting." As they crossed the bridge, voices from the past began to echo around them, Mira's laughter as a child, her father reading stories by candlelight, the last words her mother whispered before the wind carried her voice away. The bridge trembled with every forgotten moment. Corin stopped. "Do you hear that?" Mira nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "They're my memories." A storm gathered ahead, not of rain, but of noise, regret, fear, distraction. The wind howled with forgotten promises and broken songs. To cross, they had to hold tight to what truly mattered. Mira reached into her pocket and held the old wooden compass her father gave her. It didn't point north, it pointed home. Together, they whispered their most important memories aloud, and the storm began to soften. The path brightened. When they reached the island, the wind keeper waited. "You remembered yourself," she said. "Now, the final wind awaits." Part 7: The Heart of Wind. The final island floated high above the others, and a spiral staircase of wind carried them upward. Each step hummed with soft song. At the summit, they arrived in a clearing filled with feathers spinning in slow circles. At its center pulsed a glowing crystal, the wind heart. But something was wrong. Cracks split its surface. It throbbed weakly, as if gasping. The wind keeper knelt beside it. For centuries, people stopped listening to the wind, to the stories it carried. The heart has dimmed. Mira stepped forward. "Can we fix it?" "To heal it, you must share your truest voice." "Your dream," the wind keeper said. "Only a pure wind, born of hope and story, can mend what was lost." Corin looked to Mira. She nodded. Then, she began to speak. She told the wind heart the story of her village, her mother's lullabies, the dreams she wrote and whispered when no one was watching. As she spoke, the feathers lifted. The wind heart pulsed once, twice, then shattered into light. The wind swirled up in brilliant spirals. Music filled the realm. The sky cracked open into a dawn of sound and flight. The wind heart had not broken. It had bloomed. Part 8: The Return. The wind keepers surrounded Mira and Corin, bowing low. "You are now one of us," said the robed one. A keeper of whispers. They gifted Mira a pendant, an orb of captured windlight that hummed softly with her story. The portal shimmered behind them. With a last look at the realm, they stepped through and found themselves back in the still forest. But it was no longer still. The trees danced. The deer blinked and bounded. The wind rustled with stories. When they returned to Windenreach, something had changed. Children dreamt louder. People listened to the breeze. Wind chimes played forgotten songs. Mira looked at the horizon. "We did it." Part 9: The Whisper Festival. A week later, the villagers held a celebration. Mira called it the Whisper Festival. Paper lanterns in the shape of feathers floated into the sky. Children shared their dreams aloud. Old folks hummed forgotten lullabies. Corin built a wind sculpture that sang when the wind passed through it. Mira read stories to the crowd, some old, some she wrote herself. And as night fell, a breeze passed through the square, lifting every lantern at once. In the sky, a spiral of wind danced. The wind keepers were watching. Part 10: Epilogue. The Wind Never Forgets. Years passed. Mira became a storyteller, and the keeper's pendant never left her neck. One night, she sat on her windowsill, now grown and gray-haired, whispering a new tale into the breeze. Far above, in the realm of the wind keepers, feathers lifted, books opened, and new stories found their wings. The wind had remembered. And now, so would the world. The end.